I'm being recorded. Oh man, look at you with your suit. Very fancy.
Hey, Tom, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay? Yep. Okay. Is my lighting okay? Okay.
You look great.
All right. Well, good. I could throw a suit coat on if you think I should. I don't think I need to, but
You're fine. Tom, just give it about, we're just going to give it like 4 more minutes, let as many people log on as possible.
okay. Yeah, people starting to log in.
Yes, we do. And Tom, you also have an audience in here in this room. If they have any questions, I'll just ask it just because there are audio issues in terms of if they ask a question.
All right. Sounds good. So people can see me in that room as well. Okay.
Also, Tom, if you have any major issues and you can't hear us or you think we can't hear you, just let Laura know and she will let me know.
Okay. Sounds good.
And Steve, are you all right if we get started? It's 5? Yeah. And people will just, I'm sure people will continue joining in. Okay. Tom, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us virtually. We very much appreciate it.
Absolutely.
In full disclosure for everyone at home and everyone here, Stephen Peterson, who is the head of the economics club, and I came up with a blueprint of like 6 questions for both the panelists. One is Tom Lamar and the other is Gabriel Wrench tomorrow. And we gave Tom his questions yesterday and Gabriel his questions just so they had them in advance. However, obviously the questions you ask, they don't know until you ask them. But I just wanted to disclose that, just so you know. Tom, we're gonna start with what is your background? Where did you grow up? And why did you move to Moscow?
Yeah. Thanks for having me here, and thanks to the U of I Economy Club for doing this. This was great. I grew up in Delaware, went to the University of Delaware. Before going to the University of Delaware, I grew up outside of Wilmington. My parents are very Republican. I grew up next door to the Veterans Affairs Director for Joe Biden when he was the senator. So when Joe Biden came into the neighborhood, it was very easy, very normal to have your U.S. senator standing in your front yard. Politics to me never seemed a terrible thing. It was always a very easy thing. And I was very comfortable with it. I knew him by his first name. He knew me by my first name. It was very nice. I moved to Moscow after attending graduate school at Washington State University. And then after getting my graduate degree there, master's in environmental science, I moved to Moscow and started a family, worked in a lot of environmental organizations. I've been the executive director of the Palouse Clearwater Environmental Institute, otherwise known as PCEI, for 30 years now. And so that's how I got here. That's how I got involved in community activities. To me, being engaged in local government is an extension of my work, being involved in a nonprofit organization, because I feel that my work is to serve the people who live here and to work very closely to solve problems. That's very much what a person in a local government does. So when people say the politician this or the politician there, I don't have that same sort of feeling that it's a bad thing to seek election to government and to be engaged and be part of an efficient, effective working of that government.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Two things really fast for everyone at home. Please submit questions with the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Next, Tom, you said after graduate school, you stayed in the area. You stayed in Moscow. What made you stay in the area? What makes Moscow special to you?
Well, it was probably having a family and children, and Moscow, as we all know, as those of us who have raised children here know, that Moscow is a fabulous place to raise kids. It's not only a wonderful place to go to a university, but it's also a great place to become a parent and to have kids. It's a great walking community. I bike all over the place. I'm always on my bike when I'm not, working. And I commute that way. I bike for activity. It's a great place to be. I love Moscow. I love Idaho. It's great to live here in Latah County. And I like to explore and be outside and do as much outside stuff as possible. So I raised my children. They all went to the University of Idaho. They've all graduated and have careers and are doing wonderful things. And I stayed and got very dedicated to working here in this place. If you want to make a difference, it's really good to dedicate yourself to a place and really commit yourself to it. And I've done that with PCEI, with the Environmental Institute, growing that nature center. It's a 26-acre nature center on the north end of town. And when I got the call from the mayor of Moscow, was 13 years ago, when I got the phone call saying, hey, I might need to appoint you to replace a city council member that, one passed away, and but didn't have the authority to appoint me until that person's body was found. And so it was a very difficult, long time until that happened. But in the meantime, another city council member resigned and over leaving the position. So I was appointed into that position as a city council member, and then chose to run for election that fall. And then, so I was appointed for 6 months, and then I served as an elected city council member for the next 2 terms. And it was in 2014 when I was asked by actually 2 different county commissioners, one Democrat, one Republican, if I would consider running as a county commissioner. And I said, yes, I would. I took some time to think about it because I needed to do the research, and went to meetings and so forth, and then decided, yep, that would be a good thing to do. So that's how I chose to first run for county commissioner. And that was 6 years ago.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering, what do you think is the most important local political issue in this election?
Well, it's probably the ones that aren't talked about. I think the most important issues are the work that county commissioners actually do. I'm being elected into, or I hope to be elected into, a position of continuing to be a county commissioner. And the work that we do is very much focused on the work of the county government of Latah. And there are 3 county commissioners, there are 6 other elected officials. We set the budget, we set policy for the county, we write ordinances, we move forward the policy and the governing of the government of Latah County, and work very effectively with the state and the federal government on a variety of issues to help represent the people of Latah County. Um, you know, we oftentimes talk about Latah County as being a team effort. We refer to it quite frequently as Team Latah. We see ourselves as setting the gold standard for, setting Latah County as being the gold standard for all the rest of the counties within the state of Idaho. There are 44 counties here, and we think we've got the best one. And we take that very seriously and work very hard. Really, when you're a county commissioner, you end up working for all the people of Idaho, not just the people that live in your county. You end up working on policy that helps all the people throughout the state. And so we do that quite frequently. One thing that's really true about especially Latah County is that we check all political persuasion and affiliation out in the parking lot and work and come into the courthouse to do the work for the people of Latah County. And we're really proud of that.
Thank you so much. So just to, not to push you too much, but if you had to choose one specific issue that is important in this specific election, is that a question you could answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry if I didn't get to that as well as I could have. One of the issue that is affecting all of us right now is COVID. We, back in March, were handed a crisis, of course, like all 3,000 counties in the United States. There was, and still continues to be, a lack of effective federal management of the pandemic that has affected all states and all counties to varying degrees and in a rolling fashion. And Latah County, early on in this pandemic, recognized that we were going to have a problem due to a variety of issues, lack of consolidated supply chain that we could see, lack of consolidated policy from the federal government, a wide range of issues. We decided Latah County was going to declare a state of emergency and stand up an emergency operations center. And we did that quite early. We were one of 200 counties in the United States to act quickly on declaring a state of emergency. And we are exceptionally proud of that, and see that to date, no deaths in Latah County is a piece of information that is helping us feel like we are doing the right thing. Now, we all know that in the recent couple of months, we've seen a complete rise in the cases, but we are also seeing that there's a lot of containment of those cases. The University of Idaho, the City of Moscow, Latah County, Gritman Medical Center, Public Health, we are all working very closely together through this emergency operations center that we set up several months ago to get this moving. We could see quite early that the effectiveness of keeping people safe and healthy is the most important part of this issue, and it affects everybody. of course, in very different ways. It has a big impact on the economy, as we know, and it has a very big impact on the health and safety of the people that live here, and our ability to function. And the work that the university's done with testing and setting, um, helping people understand distancing and wearing of masks and washing hands and quite frequent um, um, hygiene practices. That's helping a lot to be able to function, continue to function with our economy and with our classes and whatever we're doing, whether we're in primary school or secondary school, graduate school, undergraduate school. There are a lot of efforts that we are working together on, and the county is one piece of that whole pie. And we're the ones that are leading the Emergency Operations Center so that we can better communicate between the different entities.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Regarding COVID-19 and the pandemic, you and your main opponent have vastly different opinions on the mask mandate. And each of these opinions has been validated by a large portion of the community, your opinion and his opinion. How are you proposing to bridge that divide if you get reelected?
Right. Well, yeah. So I think it's important first to acknowledge that nobody likes to wear a mask. It's not that much fun. That's not the question, but that's how a lot of the opposition to wearing masks seems to be based on something that's not necessarily helpful. But what we know is, from a public health perspective, from what we've seen with science and information, that a combination of a variety of efforts, including wearing masks, is very helpful to slowing the spread of this virus. And slowing the spread of the virus is going to enable us to continue to function economically, and to stay as safe and healthy as possible, to reduce the impact on the hospitals and other medical providers. So frequent hand washing, cleanliness, distancing, being outside as much as possible, away from others, and wearing of masks or other facial coverings is helping a lot. And so the more we can continue to work in this effort, the better, if we're going to be successful in slowing the spread of the virus. And we're having a really good, for the most part, within Latah County, a good result with that. Now, it's not 100%. We still have some spread. We still have some people getting sick and so forth. And we're working to help to try to keep people safe and healthy. But wearing of masks is really not that hard, although it's also not that pleasant. And so, and we all need to take mask breaks. I totally understand that, but we need to also make sure that we're doing what we need to do in order to keep our neighbors healthy and safe. And I think for the most part, we have pretty good recognition within the city of Moscow. There are some people that really have a hard time and really want to focus on the masks and focus on the ordinance, but really the issue needs to be focusing on what do we need to do to keep people safe.
Okay, and in regard to that, again, recently a video taken in downtown Moscow, I believe, was spread across the internet by many big names in the country. I was wondering, why do you think this issue is resonating nationally, and what does this controversy do to the image of our local community?
Yeah, thanks. I think that the why something like that spreads, I think it's kind of I think it has to do with people trying to make claims that somehow their rights are being violated. Or, I mean, we all know that mask wearing is not fun, so it's really an attractive topic to say, look, here's some people protesting wearing of masks, because none of us like to wear masks. So we all get it, right? That's, we get it. That's why people are excited about, watching something like that. But the false claims really that people are being arrested for singing a song or whatever, or some religious violation, is a way to sell the story. And that's an unfortunate result of what happened there. We're really, and that's a city of Moscow thing. And I'm running for county commissioner. So the county doesn't tell the city what to do. That's a city action, the city police. It's not the county. It's not a county thing. So, how it gets spread, I don't know. That's media and all of that kind of stuff, and that happens. And I agree with the suggestion that it's not great for how people might view this city. But I think if people spend any amount of time looking at the facts of the situation and not the emotion of the particular action or the particular arrest, then I think they'll understand that where the facts lie, and that it's not really a justified negative impression of the city of Moscow. I think the city of Moscow is doing a terrific job of helping keep us safe and healthy and moving us forward during this pandemic.
Great, thank you. My last question before we move to the audience questions is, the Moscow community has become deeply divided over the last decade along political, ideological, and religious fault lines on all sides of the spectrum. This divisiveness could tear Moscow apart. How do you see the issues, and what, if any, solutions do you have to these?
Yeah, well, thanks. I think the city, we have a lot of different people in Moscow, and I think that's great. We have really good diversity, and I think if we are able to continue to embrace our diversity, the differences of our neighbors, that's what we want to be able to embrace. The diversity of gender, the diversity of gender orientation, sexual orientation, gender identity, diversity on religion, on race, and national heritage. Moscow's a really great place, and we know that because we all live here and we love spending time, usually seeing our neighbors. We're taking a little bit of a break from that now, but most of the time we're spending with our neighbors is outside and a little bit more of at a distance. I think that some people are able to get more media attention than others, and I think that that's recognized, and I think we will be able to move on from that. A county government, which is the work that I'm doing, doesn't really take religious sides or political sides. We work for and with everybody within Latah County, and we're always there to be there to solve problems, and not really to focus on what somebody might be trying to do for political gains for their particular issues that they're trying to push on a national level. So, Latah County, like a lot of local governments, is here to work with the people that live here. And so that means all the people, not just one little group of people that might be creating an issue.
Great, thank you. We're going to move on to some audience questions now. And we have a lot typed in. And if anyone here has a question, just let me know. You can just come up to me and let me know. First, can you explain why property taxes have risen over the last few years?
Sure. There are a number of factors that impact property tax, rates that people are paying. You just froze, so maybe I just froze. I'm not sure. Um, so there are a number of things that affect property taxes, and one of those is property values. We have seen a very sharp rise in property values over the past, over quite a few years now. As property values increase, that is creating a higher rate that people are, a higher amount of money that the rates are based on, and so that affects it. We've also seen a number of different things that are happening at the state level. In 2016, the state of Idaho froze the homeowners exemption at $100,000 of value, so that as property values go up, a smaller and smaller piece of that value for a homeowner stays the same, and so a higher amount of the value is being taxed. We also know that in 2018, when the state of Idaho pegged the income tax to the federal income tax rates, and lowered that meant that there was less money available to fund schools. And so the funding of schools at the state level, as mandated by the state constitution, has not been keeping up with the demands for education. And so that has caused pressure locally throughout the state of Idaho on voters to then fund local education bonds and levies and so forth to fund education. And that also increases property taxes because people are paying more money, a larger percentage for education funding for schools, K through 12 and so forth. So there are those pressures, and then and whatever the local governments, whether they're cities or counties, need to do to fund budgets, we as county commissioners, as mayors and city council members, need to make sure that we're keeping up with our expenses. And so we are doing whatever it takes to cover those costs. We have the public defender costs that we have to pay for. There are mandated jail costs that we have to pay for. There are mandated indigent health costs that we have to pay for. So, and of course, we've got the sheriff's office to cover, elections to cover. So as various prices increase, we will make sure that we're funding it. And the maximum allowable that we're able to increase the section of the budget that is funded by property taxes is 3% per year. And depending on the year, we can go up to 3%, but we can't go over 3%. Plus, we can add a factor for new construction. So we will every year look at that. Latah County is very conservative with our budgeting, and we only budget any kind of increase within the budget that we are required to do based on the expenses that we have. Every single year that I've been a county commissioner, we have had to cut the requests from the various elected officials and department heads, because the requests always come in higher than we have the money for, even if we took the maximum allowable budget increase. So anyway, so there are a lot of different things that go into all of this. Now, the county government is one of 39 taxing entities within Latah County. And I'm one county commissioner of 3 within one of those 39 taxing entities. So I'm able to talk about one of those 39 taxing entities. The other 38 taxing entities are also have an ability to affect, change, raise, lower property taxes. So the city of Moscow, the school districts, the fire, the fire districts that we have, the cemetery districts, all of the, the recreation districts. We have a lot of different entities that affect property taxes as well. So property taxes is a really dense, big issue. A property taxpayer within the city of Moscow pays about 24% of their property tax to Latah County. Another 25% goes to the city of Moscow, and roughly, and then another 25% would go to the school district. And the other 25% is sort of all those other taxing districts that I talked about, the highway district, et cetera. So there's a spread every year. It's a little bit different. Those percentages change somewhat, but it's not just the county government that's working on property taxes. So it's a big, dense question.
Okay, thank you. Can you describe your interactions with the Moscow City Council under the current and previous administrations?
Yeah, well, I used to be a city council member, so I was one of them, or one of us. And depending on the issue, my interaction at that point might be, I might be the one of a 5-to-1 vote, or I might be a 6, or one of the 6 and a 6-to-0 vote. So it all depended on, the particular topic. I get along quite well personally and also professionally with all the city council members, not just in the city of Moscow, but the other cities that we have, within Latah County as well. Probably spend more time working with the city council members in Moscow than others, but yeah, we work quite regularly. We also have monthly meetings where we have breakfast together. Now our monthly breakfast meetings, we're eating our waffles or pancakes or whatever it is at home with a cup of coffee while we're all on Zoom call. But we still relate and share what's happening within the state of governance within Latah County. And, also visiting with university leadership, school district leadership, chamber of commerce, and so forth.
Given your work on environmental issues, how would you rate Moscow and the surrounding area's efforts to reduce carbon emissions and promote more climate-friendly policies? I will say, I'll just change that to, how would you rate Latah County's efforts to reduce carbon emissions and promote more climate-friendly policies? Yeah,
well, I can kind of answer to both of those pieces. City of Moscow has done more, I think, than Latah County itself, primarily because cities have a sort of a different set of issues that they're working on than what a county does. So a county government has sort of a different group of things it can do than a city can do based on state law, and also the effectiveness of what's going on. So the city of Moscow has a Sustainable Environment Commission, and that commission is doing a lot of work within the city of Moscow to try to figure out, well, what can the city government do to reduce its climate footprint? And so that has to do with the kinds of vehicles that the city's buying and how it's using those vehicles and so forth, how it's heating the water for the pool, or how it's what kind of energy is it using to pump water. So there's a lot of different things like that the city of Moscow is doing, and they're making huge strides, and it's really cool to see what they're doing. The county does some stuff also. There are a couple of different answers to that. We can do things like put in solar panels. We can do electric charging stations, and we've got a grant writer right now that's helping us try to find sources of money that might be possible to do some of those really good things. So those are some of the efforts there. I have been appointed to a statewide climate and economy organization. We've had a couple of conferences, Safeguarding Idaho's economy in a changing climate. And that involves various local and city leaders, people representing environmental groups and so forth, to talk about what needs to happen at the state level. I was on a carbon sequestration commission as appointed by an Idaho governor several years ago. And we're again still trying to work on, well, what do we need to do to, have Idaho be leaders in this issue? And what's really cool about that is that, some of the corporations that we have in Idaho, Simplot, Micron, and others, and some of the large farming organizations, Chobani and others, food organizations, are actually some of the leaders in this. It's not, and what's really cool about that is we need them to be the leaders, because they're the only ones that are going to be able to convince state lawmakers to be responsible at the statewide level. Local governments within the United States tend to be much more progressive on climate issues than the federal government does. And even in some cases more so than state governments. And so this is going to have to be a bottom-up leadership effort, not a top-down leadership effort. And so I'm proud of what we're doing at the city and county levels to help us move forward to get better state policy.
Thanks, Tom. I actually have a follow-up question to that. I was wondering how University of Idaho plays into these climate-friendly efforts, because I know we have a lot of initiatives spearheaded by students to make U of I more, I guess, green. I was wondering, have you found it very easy to work with them through Latah County, or is it proving difficult to work with them, specifically related to these climate change issues?
No, I failed to, sorry, I didn't include the University of Idaho in that effort that I mentioned earlier, the Safeguarding Idaho's Economy. The University of Idaho is very much a leader within this effort. And it's the students and also, the faculty and also administration. I think there are different constraints on different parts of the university, I think, but I think by and large, it's moving very much in that direction. And my experience is that the administration and the faculty look to the students for student leadership on this issue. And I think that's great. That's what needs to happen. Students are coming up with great ideas, making things happen. We're putting, there are solar panels going up on the roof, the fundraising that's happening for that right now. And so, the work that happened with the new IRIC building, the new solar panels going up, that we've had some green roofs go up on campus. Those are all really helpful, good things. My work with the university on a lot of issues, environmental, has gone back, as I say, 30 years. With my work with PCEI, we've oftentimes worked with many, many university students to come out and do really cool things. Their students are planting trees, they're cleaning up trash in many places, they're designing and building the covered bike shelter at PCEI that has a living roof on it. They did that 13 years ago. So it's like there's a lot of really cool leadership work that's being done by students, by professors, by folks in the administration to move forward these different ideas. And some of them line up really nicely with great business development ideas, and that's also exciting, because if we could turn something that's a cool idea for the environment into something that also helps create jobs, and keep people here doing really good things, that's another bonus. My opinion is that the economy and the environment do well. They both do well together when we're thinking about both of those at the same time and moving them forward.
Thank you. Next question, several budget items, including the auditor, clerk, recorder, disaster services, fairgrounds, etc., have consistently come in under budget. So why does their budget continue to grow?
I don't really understand the question. The auditor, clerk, recorder budget comes in under budget?
Yeah, let me repeat that.
Yeah.
Let me make sure I'm reading this correctly. Several budget items, including the auditor, the disaster services, and fairgrounds, have consistently come in under budget. So why does their budget continue to grow? And if that, I don't know, just answer that.
Yeah, I'll try. I don't know if I really agree with with what's being understood. Maybe somebody's understanding how the budget looks differently than how I understand it, but that's not the case in my experience. So I know that with the clerk, auditor, recorder budget, we've had some pretty significant expense increases in recent years with elections. Elections are, we have to spend money to hold fair and effective elections. Some of the budget sources are outside of property tax dollars. So, we're able to apply for money to pay for some of the election expenses and so forth. So that's good. We can actually get reimbursed for election consolidation and some other things. The fair budget, this year has been completely weird. We lost a ton of money with the fair and event center portion of the budget this year because revenue was down so much because of COVID. So this is a bizarre year, but actually the fair has been managed quite well, and especially in recent years, because we have an amazing fair manager who is doing a tremendous job of having lots of activities. In fact, we regularly average more than one event per day at the fairgrounds normally. And so it's actually bringing in revenue. But we've been doing some things also to improve the fairground. So we've had some recent high expenses. We fixed a bunch of electrical issues. We're working to improve some of the buildings. And so there are some expenses there that are coming in. And then what was the other department?
One second, sorry.
No, it's sorry.
The disaster services.
Oh, disaster services. Again, we have grants that we get from the Idaho Operation of Emergency Management. So some of that is paid for that way. We just signed another 3-year contract with them. So I mean, that's kind of a strange, it's an odd part of the budget because some of the money comes in from a lot of different sources, but we have one full-time employee that is the director of disaster services, and Mike Nealon does a great job. And he's had his hands more than full this year dealing with an ongoing disaster with COVID. And so he's been very busy that way. And then whenever we get a crazy windstorm or a flood or something, that is another layer on top of that he's very active with that. But one of the things that we've been doing in recent years with disaster services is preparing some redundancy for what would happen if we lost the courthouse and didn't have the ability to dispatch emergency services from the courthouse. Where would we put the dispatch? And it might, it would be in a different building. And so figuring out the redundancy there so we can be ready in an emergency to continue to perform emergency operations from the county level. So those are the kinds of things that we're thinking about and dealing with there. I think I answered everything, but maybe too much in some areas.
Well, they can submit another question if
Okay, thanks.
I encourage them to do that. You mentioned policy that impacts all the people of Idaho. What types of policy have you worked on that affects people outside of Latah County?
So yeah, that's a good question. When one of the things that we've done recently is to improve the funding that levels that come in when there are okay, so here's one example. Jail funding. When we receive a state offender in our jail, the cost per day is $105. We are only reimbursed $75 by the state. So working to try to get that policy changed so that the state is actually paying the full cost of a state inmate. That's one example. Another example is the cost. And so if we could get that changed, that's going to improve all the, the policies that affect all the counties within the state of Idaho. When we are working with the funding that comes in for people who are charged with a crime, most of that money historically has been going to, when people pay fees and so forth, most of that money goes to the cities rather than the counties. And so we've been working recently to change the formula so that more of the money will go to counties and as opposed to cities. The counties are the ones that house an inmate and take care of them, do their public defense, do prosecution and so forth. And so it's important for counties to get a better share of the reimbursement for those expenses. And so that's another thing that would help all the counties. So when I'm talking about what impacts what we're doing to improve the lives or the to help all the people in the state of Idaho, it's generally to affect state policy that improves how counties are treated throughout the state. Because counties don't really always get the best deal with a lot of these policies.
Okay. When looking at how the state lifted mask sanctions within the state, what is the outlook of the rise of cases within Moscow where the mask sanctions are strictly followed?
Well, okay, so you're saying the question is the state lifted its...
So I think the gist of what the question is asking is, can you explain the rise of cases within Moscow when we have a mask mandate? So I think the gist of the question is the rise in cases combined with the mask mandate kind of contradicts this idea that we need masks in the first place.
Oh, I see. Okay. So the idea, the question is something like if we have any rise of cases at all, that means that masks aren't working? Is that, or, okay.
Essentially that in a simplistic form, yeah.
Yeah. So I think the really important thing here is that we're trying to slow the spread, not eliminate the spread, right? So disease still spreads, no matter, I mean, it happens, right? Disease spreads. What we're trying to do is slow down the spread. Washing hands, it's not 100%, but it sure is helpful. You know, having 6 feet is not 100%, but it's sure better than being right next to each other. And masks, it's not 100%, but they definitely help. And so it's one of the tools that we have to be able to slow the spread, not eliminate the spread. It would be great if we could eliminate it, but that's not possible at this point. And so when you look at all of the cases within Idaho, even though we are seeing a big increase in Moscow, which is the biggest part of what we're seeing within Latah County, it's better than it would be if we didn't have a mask ordinance. The mask ordinance is definitely helping to keep it contained better than it is right now, or than it would be if we didn't have a mask ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Are there any questions here? Oh, yes, we have a question here.
What percent of the county budget is discretionary on the part of the county?
Okay, what percent of the county budget is discretionary on the part of the county commissioners?
So there's it's a $22 million budget. About it. I mean, all of it we impact. We set all of the budget, all 22 million of it. But about half of that, 10.9 million or 10.7 million, is is paid for by property taxes. The other portion of it is paid for by a variety of other sources, grants, state reimbursements. There's, and this is just the revenue piece of it. But we, we get a portion of liquor sales, we get a portion of sales tax, we get these different pieces of money that come in for different parts of the budget. The biggest expense that we have is the sheriff's office, and we could, I mean, some part of all of the budgets are constitutionally mandated. We must have a sheriff's office, but it's our decision to say how much it's going to get funded. Are we going to fund 100% of what the sheriff asks for, or are we going to reduce what they're asking for by a certain amount? So, the requests that come in are from the sheriff's office might be, well, we want to replace 5 cars this year, and that's going to cost us, $250,000. And the commissioners spend some time with that request and all the other requests that we have, starting in March and ending when we set the budget in August, deciding how much we're going to spend in any particular areas. So we end up saying, okay, this year we said, well, we'll fund 3 out of the 5 cars because we don't have enough. We don't think we're going to have enough money next year, so we're trying to plan for that. So I guess all of that is within our discretion. We're making cuts on a regular basis, and some of what we do must be funded. But is it funded at the level? We're required to pay for public defense, because that's what the state requires all the counties to do. So we set the budget at a certain amount of money that we think is going to effectively enable us to continue to hire public defenders and not have them just quit. So, we have a contract that might be $125,000 for a public defender to perform whatever services. over the course of a year. If the commissioners decided, well, we're only going to pay you $75,000, we'd we'd have public defenders quitting left and right. So we would never really get anywhere. So at some point, the economy, the economics of what it takes to have somebody fulfill a position, whether they're going to be a sheriff's deputy that's going to continue to serve as a sheriff's deputy, or be willing to work in the jail and check in people who have been arrested, or be a public defender. It has a lot to do with, well, what are the economics of somebody being willing to do that job or not do that job? So we have discretion, but we also are working in the world of what are people willing to do or not do for a certain amount of money.
Okay, we actually got a couple more questions in. What is your favorite part about serving the community of Moscow, and what do you look forward to achieving in another commissioner term?
So I guess it would be serving within Latah County. I mean, I live in Moscow, but I serve throughout Latah County. I think my favorite part is the people. One of the things that I've really enjoyed doing when I first ran 6 years ago, I was door knocking in Beauville, and I came across a family that didn't really understand the difference between a city and a county government, and what's the, where's the state, do this or that, understanding about like, spending on roads and so forth. And so I decided that one of the things I wanted to do after that visit was to start having our commission meetings throughout Latah County. And it was, so in the last 4 or 5 years, we've had 19 meetings outside of the courthouse in different city halls and fire stations and Grange buildings and so forth, just to have our commission meetings out and about and meeting with people. I also attend lots of city council meetings, and I love to just spend time meeting with people and understanding what their questions are and better connecting with them. So I am really happy about that work. That's probably my favorite thing. There are some really fun things we get to do. I haven't dressed up like Santa Claus yet, but we do have Christmas parties and so forth for employees. I'm sad to say that we're probably not going to do that this year. We have great people that work at Latah County, and I'd love to be able to, help them enjoy the holidays. There are lots of things that we do as commissioners to connect people with different projects. I'm really excited, for example, about the work we did for NRS and for MZ, two businesses within Latah County that we're looking at expanding and growing here. And we were able to provide them with a 5-year, 75% tax exemption that would save them huge amounts of money in their property taxes, in order for them to pour that money into their building development and to make their investment that much stronger, so that they can then hire people and provide more jobs and so forth. So it was a real incentive kind of work that we did for both of those two businesses. And I also work as the chair of this regional government group. It's all the county elected officials from the 5 counties from north central Idaho. And last year we had meetings. I was the one that chose to have meetings in these different locations, but the Clearwater Paper Company and Schweitzer Engineering Laboratory in Pullman, for the purpose of building relationships between elected officials and the major employers in our area. And I think that relationship building goes a long way to then encouraging Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories to recently buy 150 acres in Latah County and consider someday building a plant here or expanding and growing here. So I think that those kinds of efforts that we can do, I want to continue doing that kind of work where we're building relationships between different private businesses and the government to, help see how we can all work together.
Thanks, Tom. We're going to keep this at the last question because I think we've had quite a few questions on environmental issues, but it is something I think that's important to our campus. So we're going to end on this. Would you characterize your political and governance perspective as progressive? And if so, how does that inform your approach to county governance and priorities there?
Yeah, I definitely think I am progressive in the way I think about a lot of this work that we do. I think that it definitely goes to my ability to see the work that we do, in that I feel very inclusive about ideas and about people. So I want to continue having Latah County be a place where people feel safe and welcome to be engaged and want to be part of what we do. So, for example, we're getting ready to let people know what citizen commissions have openings on them so that people can apply and say, hey, I'd like to serve on the fair board, or I'd like to be in the planning commission, or I'd like to be a zoning commissioner, something like that, when we have openings. So we're going to be doing that soon. And also efforts, for example, I guess, no, it was earlier this month, we're in October still, we passed a proclamation proclaiming the second Monday in October as Indigenous Peoples Day, very much wanting to recognize the history of this place that we called Latah County and the importance of the people that lived here way before we started calling this place Latah County. And so that recognition is important as well. We are definitely interested in making sure that everybody feels welcome and safe, and made efforts, really strong efforts, for example, with our personnel policy to make sure that we disallow any discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity as a county government. I'm proud of my work when I was a city council member to make sure that we passed a human rights ordinance doing the same at the citywide level. So I definitely want to make sure that that we are constantly looking at ways that we can make sure that Latah County is continuing to be positive in the way that we grow ourselves culturally, spiritually, economically, and making sure that we're doing all of this in a way that is respectful and protective of our environment and the people that live here.
Great, thank you so much. Tom, I guess I do have one last question. There are many people on this campus, but also in Latah County in general, who might not feel strongly one way or the other about gay or about you. I know there's a lot of information on your respective websites, but who can they contact to ask like specific questions if they can't make it to an event like this?
Yeah, well, they could definitely send me an email. I mean, that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. And that's Lamar for Latah at gmail.com, for FOR, not the number for. Or they can also email me at votetomlamar@gmail.com. Either one of those will get to me. And my website is tomlamar.org. And on Facebook, it's also tomlamar.org. So those are all ways that people can learn more about me or ask questions, or ask more questions about the budget or whatever it might be that people have would like to know more about. But those are all the easiest ways to get a hold of me. And I look forward to answering whatever people have, and I have no more yard signs. I've put a lot of yard signs, and I'm getting very low on masks. So if somebody really wants a mask, they should get a hold of me right away because they're almost gone. But it's been really, I love the work that I'm doing, and would love to continue to be your county commissioner, be one of your 3 county commissioners. Let me know what I can do to convince you that I'm the best one to vote for.
Thanks, Tom. Give me a second. I haven't been looking behind me. Did anybody else have a question? I've been doing a lot of online questions and have not taken any here besides Steve. Does anyone have a question? No, we're good. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Tom. We all very much appreciate you taking time out of your evening to come and speak with us today.
I'm happy to do it. Let me know if I've misunderstood any of the questions, or if I could give any more information. Just send me an email or contact me, and I'll get there.
Great. Thank you. Have a great night, Tom.
Okay. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.